Hello, welcome to the December 2nd, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test and then we will go ahead and begin. Bear with me just for a moment. All right, everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. And I work as a employee of Yamaha Corporation of America, who is and I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. If you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And if you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could submit questions in advance by emailing clubcubase@steinberg.de, or you could simply, ask questions live in the chat field. When asking questions, if you could specify which level of Cubase you're at. So if you're in Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or version 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system, that information will be helpful. My ability to answer questions in real time will soon be eclipsed, and I won't be able to answer in a real-time manner. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if you could try to avoid asking the same question repeatedly, we'll go through chronologically and get through as many questions as we possibly can. So I appreciate people's patience with getting a response. We should have all of the topics covered in the live stream actually pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream. I have to rewatch the live stream and then type up all of the questions with timestamps, but you could look for that as a reference point. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website. We do have two people that serve as moderators. We have Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do it to make it a better community. So we want to give a special thanks to them. Also, if you wanted to check out a wonderful resource of relevant information for the Steinberg community, you can go to the Cubase Nation Discord, and we'll give Jazz Dude another thanks for his work in compiling that and being involved. So, with that, we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to pop out my chat. All right, so we see that Benny is not going to be able to make it today. He has a gig from Sweden. All right, so we just see a question. Hi, Greg. Can I back up all my Cubase settings to clouds like OneDrive, etc.? So yeah, all you have to do is just come over and go to Edit, and then you'll have Profile Manager. So you could just simply back this up. So once you have your profile with all your settings and configurations, you could export this to, like I have a cloud-based service here called Ignite that we use for our corporate cloud storage, but you could just simply store that file anywhere that you want. Okay. So just see a question. Also, is my Cubase profile save applicable to Nuendo? So I'm not sure if it's going to carry over exactly, but let's go ahead and see if we could load it up into Nuendo. So let's say if I wanted to export this profile, and I'll just call it Cubase to Nuendo, and I'll save it to my desktop. And I'll open up Nuendo quickly here. We'll see if we could import that. I believe most of the settings would be the same, but they are two different programs. So there might be some things that don't get carried across, but we'll take a look. All right, so now we're in Nuendo. And let's see if we go to our profile manager, if we could import the one that we created. So let's come over here to our profile manager. Let's import, and let's come directly to our desktop. and Cubase to Nuendo. So yeah, it looks like you can exchange the profiles back and forth between Cubase and Nuendo. All right. All right. And also, question: is there a one-button export to export all my settings, expression maps, presets, key mappings, etc.? So I don't think expression maps are carried over into. I could be mistaken, but I don't think expression maps are carried over into profile. But your user presets, key mappings, all your key commands, macros, all that is carried over in the profile manager. All right, wonderful to see Stefan from Sweden and Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. We have Uno Momento checking in from Finland. We have Jan from Cubase Index in Stockholm, Sweden. We have Nick, great to see you on the live stream. We have Soren from Sweden as well. All right, we have Toon from Belgium. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question from Patrick. Hi, Greg. Recorded 4-minute vocals. It was recorded separately. Then I select all and glue it and try to delete silence. It's not working. How to use the detect silence to entire and delete all at the same time. All right, so let me just come over here. I'll just do this in a new project, and we'll try to replicate this. So it could be that when you glue parts together that it actually creates a part as opposed to an event. So let me come over. So I'll just put all these onto one track. Okay, and I'll just add some silence between them here. So let me just go to set a spacer between the selected events of 2 seconds. Okay, so let's say now we have.
In the end. In the end.
Okay, so we have all these. So if we wanted to come over here, so instead of gluing the events together, so when we glue events together, this will actually turn them into what's called a part. So, a part is a collection. While it looks, like we have our different events laid out for us here, a part is just a collection of events. So in here, there's no silence between those. So what I would probably do if you wanted to, get rid of silence, instead of gluing, to turn it into a part. And we could think of a part as a collection of events, so that when they're all glued together, I can move one and they would all be kind of tied together, and it goes into a separate editor. But if we just go to audio and we select bounce selection and we replace the events, at this point, if we wanted to do a detect silence, so I'll just make this larger so it's more obvious to see. So I'll select this and we'll go to audio to detect silence. So we'll go to advanced here and go to detect silence. At this point, we could set the threshold, and then we could, analyze the parts and then process and then delete. But again, if you have silence within a part, there's no silence. It could be just that there's, no data between the particular parts if you glued it together. So give that a shot, Patrick. Let me know if that makes sense. All right. So we have Maz. We have Maz here from Rochester, New York. It says just got Cubase 12 Pro on Windows 10. Thanks for the live stream. So thanks. We also have Joe from Rochester, who watches the live streams as well. So I was just thinking of Rochester yesterday. I saw pictures of a friend that went into House of Guitars, which I always loved going into. So welcome to the live stream. We hope that we can answer questions and help you out. All right. So we have from You Reckon Dakru, the Tree of Life, just saying greetings from Israel. So thanks for being on. chat field just jumped on me. All right. So you see development of a void, says Greg. I want to thank you for being so patient and graceful with our questions. Have you considered adding a donation button during your streams? No, because I do this as part of my job, so that's how I'm compensated for this. So, I'm doing it during work hours, and it's part of my work responsibilities. I appreciate, that you want to, have donations, and I'm honored by that. But really, I'm compensated by my salary for this. So, but if you want to send a nice letter to email to Yamaha in America or Steinberg, that's always appreciated. So you could do that in lieu of a donation. So. All right, so we see Uno Memento just saying he has more snow in Finland. Sorry about that. I guess you live in Finland, so that's to be expected. All right, so we have a question from Mark is, hello from Moldova. Can you please show me something important in Cubase? I haven't even started, but I want to learn a bit. I use a UR44 interface with Cubase Elements, 9.5, LE, and AI. Thanks. So the one thing I would always do when you're starting a project, so if you're just starting, I think file management could be really critical. And this is what comes to bite people, what comes back to haunt them later, like, a simple, like, oversight, a simple error that can cause a tremendous amount of problems later on that has consequences. So when starting a new project, come over here, and there are various templates that you could start with, but maybe if we come over and create empty, and then in 9.5, there could be, I think this preference had changed in 11, but when you go to here, choose prompt for project location. So ideally for file management, and sometimes when you record audio and you have different projects, the placement of the audio and samples can all be very critical. So you don't necessarily want to have 10 songs all in the same folder. So think of having a unique folder for each song or project. So instead of using a default location, try to select prompt for project location. And now what we could do is for every single project, we could say, okay, I wanted to come and let's say I wanted to create a new folder, and we'll make this December 2nd, 2022. So now when I do this, we have a unique project folder for our song. So when you do another song, start with a new project folder. Then as we record audio into this particular project, so I'll just come over here, and we'll just call this track mark is, okay. And we record audio in, that audio is recorded and it's going to be placed into that particular folder. So if we look at our pool window and we look at our audio source, that when we look at the path, that we will see that it's going to be stored in the folder that we created in an audio folder. So just starting off, if you learn the habit of, and it's not a sexy feature until you get stuck and you are losing files. Think of every new project as having a unique folder, an individual independent folder. And then at that point, you won't be losing audio files for projects. And you're like, oh, I had this amazing vocal performance or great guitar solo, and now I can't find it, and it shows up in a different song. And that happens to really high profile people that just don't do simple file management from the start. So, but if you have any other particular questions, let us know as well. All right. So we see from Patrick asks, Greg, can I copy and paste note and chords inside key editor without touching mouse? All right. So see if we want it to come here. I think we show that in quick project. So I think the standard cut, copy, paste key commands will work. All right, so say I'll take this. Let's get to okay. So you may have to use a mouse to select particular notes, but let's say if I want to come here and I just hit Control or Command C, and then let's say wherever I want, so if I wanted to now move let's say my song position, and then I could just paste using all keyboard shortcuts. So you can navigate using the keyboard shortcuts. So if you wanted to do that, or just say, okay, we want to come right over here and now paste. So that way you could just kind of cut, copy, paste directly without using a mouse if you want to, with just kind of standard keyboard shortcuts. So just Control C for copy, Control V or Control Command V for paste, and Control Command C for copy. All right, so we have a question from Patrick Julian Inspired. How do you set up addictive drums 2 in Cubase 12 LE with multiple buses and group buses for individual drum pieces? I don't have a copy or license of addictive drums, but I'll show you how we could do it using, a similar concept. So let's say we have Groove Agent, and right now everything is playing through one stereo out. So it's really kind of a function of the particular interface. So when I come to in Groove Agent, and there's probably something similar in addictive drums, I had a license 15 years ago or something, but here we could select our different outputs. So I could say, okay, I want my kick going out of output 2, my snare out of output 3, my hi-hat out of output 4, my overheads to output 5, and then my room, so let's say my overheads to 5 and my room mics to output 6. So now when we go to the mix console, we could just activate. So as we play our particular project, we can now, let's say if we go to the pattern, we could, let's take off cycle here. So now everything will be kind of isolated. Now, one other thing you could do with any virtual instrument, just to have the multiple outputs enabled, and I could see all of my outputs when I click here. So there's my multiple outputs. But if you go to where the VST instrument is, you could also just kind of click here and you'll see input output options. And then you can say, okay, I want to activate the outputs for this particular instrument. So you could do it from directly from the instrument rack as well. So where you see this little drop down arrow, then I could say, okay, I want it to go to Groove Agent SE and I want to activate all of my outputs. And then it's just however you route within the instrument to those particular outputs can be done within addictive drums. So unfortunately I can't show that, but I'm sure you could find it pretty easily. Nick just says, I've heard you get free Cubase tips if you whack the like button. So it's true. It's true. that's a very good point, Nick. So yeah, and if you do learn something new, make sure you do hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that, because we do these live streams every Tuesday and Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. All right, so we just have a question. Hi, Greg. Can you show us the quickest way, to audio quantize? So it's really, when you go to the quantize panel, so I'm just going to go to my quantize settings here. So some people miss that they may have the audio warp turned off, but let's say, okay, I just want to quantize to eighth notes, this particular audio file. So I have this selected, I have eighth notes selected. So now let's say I want to add a swing, and then I'm just going to hit the letter Q, and we can see that the audio has just shifted just like that. So if you wanted to, just select the event. If you don't see it quantized, check the value here, and that audio warp is enabled. And then once that's done, then you could just kind of quantize away. So let's say, okay, I want to have more swing. So now I hit Q, and you could see the swing. And let's say, okay, I want this to be 16th notes or 16th note triplets. So now we could just quantize, and you'll see that whatever selected audio file will automatically just carry over. But if I don't have the audio warp turned on here, then I quantize, and it's like, oh, why is nothing happening? So you have to have the event selected, and then just kind of hit Q. But without that enabled, you hit Q, nothing happens. That's turned on, you hit Q, and then a quantize will be enabled. All right, so we have Balsa checking in from Montenegro. Thanks for joining us. And we have Playbaz Records checking in from Sweden. And John Costigan. So we missed you on Tuesday and on the Zoom social. So glad to see you here. All right, we have Spike Williams checking in from Wales. All right, just reading through. Sorry, All right, so we have a question from Matt Elston from London. Hi, Greg. If I record and automate by sliding a small bar on the mix console for an effect send and adjusting the pre-gain level, it'll bring up that automation under the selected track on the main window. And how do I just bring up the automation edit window from main window as wasn't listed with the others? All right, he's just saying hello to the Steinberg family. All right. All right, so let's say if I'm here and I have an effect send. So I'm going to add an effects channel to this. All right, and now let's say I have this selected and I'm in the mixer. So let's say all right, so if you wanted to just kind of right click, so if you're in the mixer, so let's say if I'm here, then I could just say right click and we can say show level automation track. So now that I've done that, that will automatically, when I want to draw in my send level. So as we listen to this now, we'll see the send level automatically change. So whatever parameter that you're kind of hovering over, right click. And then you could say, okay, I want to show the level automation track or show enable automation track. So, if you wanted to just go to that particular area, and again, if we go to sends here, right click, and then you could say show level automation track, and that will automatically, populate that automation track for you right there. So let me know if that's helpful, Matt. All right, so we have a question from Spike Williams. Hey, Greg, is there a way to upsample, say, from 44.1 16-bit to, I guess, it says 98 32-bit, I'm assuming 96K 32-bit in Cubase? So if you have a particular project, all you would need to do, realize that everything that you're doing in Cubase will, so it won't necessarily improve the quality of a recorded signal. But if you wanted to change, and we could have multiple bit depth audio files. So you could have a 64-bit floating point, a 32-bit file, a 24 and a 16-bit file, all resident in the same project. So you don't really have any benefits turning the 24-bit into like a 32-bit, but or 16-bit to 32-bit, other than you could take more hard disk space. But you can have you can have multiple bit depth audio files, you can have one common sample rate. So to change the sample rate of the project, just simply come over, and I'll just switch to a different project just to show this. So right now everything's at 44.1. If we go to the project menu and go to the project setup, which you could also access by hitting Shift S, here I could just say, okay, right now, and I'll just play this as a quick reference for pitch. So now if I wanted to change this to 48K, I could hit. So I'm just going to take this from the project setup, hit OK, and it'll ask me if you want to convert to the new sample rate. We say yes. We can keep the original files. We'll be prompted if we want to keep it at the original sample positions. We'll say no. And now as we play back, all the files are now 48K. And that way you don't have to do any kind of messing around in the project itself. So, sometimes you can benefit from doing processing at higher bit depths, but, just kind of playing back the audio, it's not going to enhance the quality, I don't think, just by having more bits and, like upsampling a sample rate. I think it would still have the same audio quality, but, maybe if you're doing processing on it, that the processing could benefit from a higher sample rate. All right. Wonderful to see Best Korean Jesus from San Diego on. Glad you could join us. All right. So we see, I see question from Tom says, in my template, I have many plugins on the effects channels. Loading takes a lot. Any tips, bypass effects or deactivate or load in a quick way when needed? So what I've seen a lot of composers doing, for all of their virtual instruments is, instead of like having multiple computers and farming, samples and instruments to different machines, is just to, as you mentioned, just kind of right clicking and taking the different tracks, and we could disable the selected tracks, and as you need to work with them, we could just, and you could have this on a keyboard shortcut, you could just enable the particular tracks. I think that, and there's a lot of composers I know that have kind of migrated to this, and most of them say that, like, why would I do it the other way? It just seems stupid. So a lot of my composers that have like huge templates that really kind of push the envelope will choose to just, enable when needed from their template. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and you can have a keyboard shortcut to just kind of turn that on and off. All right. All right, so we just see, hey, Greg, is there a way to edit MIDI notes on one track and then have that edit transferred to other tracks? Okay, so let's say I'll just do new project. So if it's like the same data, it's pretty easy to do. So let's say just add a quick instrument track here. All right, so I'll just duplicate this track. All right, so let's say I have like the same part on both tracks, so I'll just come here and all right, so let's say I have the same data on both of them. So if I wanted to just select both of them, and then I can hit Control or Command plus the letter G, like Greg. Now when I do an edit on one of the parts here, so I'll just take this and I'll move it down. You can see that those changes will be applied to both tracks. And if I wanted to ungroup them, I would hit Control or Command plus the letter U. And then as I do an edit, it would only be applied to that one particular track. So I had both of them selected. Sorry about that. So let's say I select this, and so try that. So you can try to group the two events together. All right, so we have a question from Walter Till. Is it possible to set a separate grid for nudge event then quantize? Yeah, so this is a new feature that was introduced in Cubase 12. All right, so we'll show it to here. So let's say, like I have my current grid set to, let's say, to bar. So now I can only move this event by bar. So let's come over here and I'll make sure that I have the nudge palette turned on. I may have to move it up. Okay, so let's say, okay, so I have my nudge here. So right now when we go to okay, so we could say, okay, now when I go to nudge, let's say this particular, we'll say link to grid. So now when I nudge, it's only going to nudge based on the grid setting. So we say, okay, I want to nudge it by beat. So it's going to nudge that event by beat. But we can see that this is set to link to grid. But if I wanted to nudge in seconds, at this point, I could say, okay, I want to nudge it by 100 milliseconds while my snap here is still set to beat. When I nudge, my nudge can be in a different format. So now this will nudge in 100 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds, but my snap is still set to beat. So you just want to go to like the nudge settings and make sure that it's not linked to the grid. So we could choose, again, independent nudging values from what our snap and editing values are. All right, so we have a question, follow-up regarding macros. Say I want to tidy up a session and I start grouping parts. Is there a way to tell Cubase 12 to send selected tracks to a pre-made group rather than to a new one? Okay, so yeah, we can do that. So let's jump over here to this project. There's a couple ways to do it. So let's say I wanted to take all of my drums and send it to a group. So I'm going to add a group channel. Let's say this is an existing group channel. Okay, so if I come and I select all of the events and I want to hold down my Alt or Option plus the Shift key, I can take these and now all of the tracks that were selected are routed to the drum group. So as we play, everything is sent directly to that drum group. Now, if I wanted to do this, let's say I had a drum group, and let's say I wanted to take, and all these tracks are going to the stereo out. You could also create a Project Logical Editor preset. So Alt or Option plus Shift, and selecting one will take all of the selected tracks to that particular route, to that particular group or routing. But let's say if I say, okay, I wanted to take, so we'll say transform, and what we want to do is to take tracks, and we could say, and the property that they are set to is selected. So this way we take selected tracks, and then we go to track operation and connect output, and then we can say send it to my drum bus here. So if you have like templates, you could do this. So right now they're all going to stereo out. If I hit apply, all my selected tracks will now be sent to my drum group. So again, in the functions, we choose transform. Container type is equal to track. Property is set to that the track is selected, and so that's what we want to do something to, and what we want that something to do is go to track operation and then choose connect output or input, or in this case output, and then select the particular bus that you want, and you could do it like that. Probably Alt or Option plus Shift is faster, but that's how you could do it, to send tracks to multiply selected tracks to an existing group pretty easily. All right, so we have Tony Endesh says, hey, Greg, great to be here today, and thank you for your amazing job you do from Kenya. So thank you for the kind words, and I'm glad to be able to help people out. And thanks for being on the live stream. All right, so we see a question. What's the best way to find quantization value inside the key editor, whether it's 16th, 32nd, or 16th, 32nd triplets? Sorry, just have a message. Because sometimes it's confusing how to easily find which is the quantizing value I should use. So, it could really vary depending on exactly, what you want to do. But one of the beautiful things with Cubase is, let's say I come here and let's say I have a bunch of notes in. So let's say I have 16th notes, All right, so we look at my 16th notes here. So, so a lot of times, depending on the music, I would say, probably the two, you might do like, quarter note, I would say it may not be, such 30-second notes that you might be working with, but let's say we have 16th notes and we want to, find the particular quantized value for this. So I'll just do this in the key editor so we could see it a little easier. I think that's where the question was. All right, so we have, just a whole slew of, 16th notes. So when we want to come over, let's say I quantize this to quarter notes. All right, so I'll select all my notes here and I'll hit Q. So now I only see, notes that are on the quarter note. So if it is the wrong value, what you can do is, let's say, oh, I want to try eighth note triplets now. So instead of re-quantizing the already quantized data, Cubase is smart enough to say, okay, I just want to come over here, and now I could re-quantize from the original data. So say, okay, let's make it 16th note triplets. And we could just, as we do this, so there's no consequence of picking kind of the wrong quantization value initially. So, and a lot of times you may go, this part is, I want to be quantized to triplets. This, I want to be quantized to 16th notes. I want this to be quintuplets. So, it could be different parts within the song. So, but, being that you could just easily try out ideas without, it screwing up the original data, you could just easily try the different values within different sections if needed, and then find exactly what is the best settings for each song. And every song may have different quantized values that are more appropriate for it. So it's kind of hard to say always do 16ths or always do eighths or quarters. So. All right, so we have Ali checking in from Vienna. Thanks for joining us today. I see Spike Williams is a proud whack the like button number 35 today, so thank you for that. All right, so we see from Val Lee, he had sent a question about how to configure headphones with Bluetooth headphones for Cubase. And I think the question was, how to, to set up Cubase to work with Bluetooth headphones, and he wasn't getting any sounds out of it. So if you want to use Bluetooth headphones, realize that there's, some things to be aware of, some limitations of working with Bluetooth. So one, I believe it only works at 48 kilohertz sample rate. So if you're working at 44.1 or 88.2 or 96K 192, it's probably not going to actually carry that over. The other thing to be concerned about is that Bluetooth headphones can have a lot of latency. So I think it's usually 43-ish or so milliseconds of latency. So every time that you hit play, just it transmitting the sound will be delayed. And that could be, if you're doing editing, that could throw you off. But what you have to do is, most Bluetooth headphones don't have dedicated professional audio drivers. So, and what you need to do is to come over here to your studio setup. So if you don't see it listed here as an audio driver, you may have to, if you're on Windows, go to and this is different than on Mac, you'll see a generic low latency driver. So say if I switch that, and then if we go to the control panel, at this point, you have to actually tell, you'll see probably like an HDMI output. Maybe if you have an HDMI on your computer, you'll have the onboard audio interface, and you'll have any other thing that has a standard Windows driver. So in the control panel, and this will look different on Windows, you'd have to select the output to the actual Bluetooth headphones there. So, there's a lot of gotchas. I know that Bluetooth headphones are convenient because they're wireless, but there's a lot of downsides to that, to working with traditional wired headphones. So, and it's not necessarily a limitation of Cubase. It's just kind of the characteristics of the particular working within Bluetooth headphones. In a DAW environment. So. And I think I replied via email to Valley. So, all right, you see Jazz Dude with some vigilant moderation. Thank you for that. All right. So you see from Patrick Emmanuel A says, question, Greg, 15-minute cue, random notes in each bar. I select all duplicated notes for enter cue inside key editor, but after listening, I want to delete all the notes, which I duplicated in the second time without Control Z. Okay, so let me see if I could replicate this. Okay. So say we have random notes. It says Q random notes in each bar. I select all duplicated notes for enter Q inside key editor, but after listening, I wanted to delete all the notes, which I duplicated in second time without Control Z. All right. All right, so let's say I select, let me just make this event longer here. Okay. So 15-minute cue, random notes in each bar. I select all duplicated notes for enter Q inside key editor, but after listening, I wanted to delete all the notes, which I duplicated the second time. So let's say if I duplicated these notes. Says you wanted to, okay, so let's say duplicated notes in enter Q inside key editor, but after listening, I wanted to delete all the notes, which I duplicated in second time without Control Z. So if you want to do it in the key editor, I mean, you could just select the notes and hit the backspace or delete key. So, that way you don't have to use Control Z if you don't want to, but if you had a number of duplicated notes and you say, okay, I just want to delete those, and you could also just grab the eraser tool. So say if I wanted to just draw around, select a group of notes with the eraser tool, we could do that. So let me know if that's, and make sure, I'm not sure if I understand the enter notes, but let me know if I misunderstood, Patrick. All right, so we see from Pindo Purba says, hi, I have a question. I've experienced where inserts and channel strips on a few of my projects is not producing any change. What is the cause for that? So one is make sure that, so sometimes you could have, inserts, on particular tracks. So let's say I have a number of inserts here. So, make sure, some of them may have, if you have like the constrained delay compensation on, see if it's kind of illuminated blue or kind of orange. So let's say if I just switch this to so if it's illuminated like this, it should be heard, but sometimes if you have a plugin without any settings on it, it may not be heard. But sometimes if it looks like this would indicate that the plugin is bypassed or is not enabled, so we could, so you could see clearly if that is the case. But check that, and if you wanted to go to like, the channel strip as well. So, you could have the channel strip active. But this should, pretty easily come over and, be able to, once you see this, so if we kind of bypass the channel strip here, then that won't make any difference in the sounds. So check those two things and let me know what you find. All right, so just see from Bruno Maya, says Cubase is a long way from redefining the sample rate, it seems. So a lot of times it could be that I'm not sure if a lot of iOS devices or Android devices allow you to work with, different sample rates, but maybe if you have a different audio interface, it might. All right, so we see from Craig Funder, how can I run Cubase 12 with a valid license but with my computer offline? So if you really need it to, there is kind of a convoluted process to, if your computer will never be online, to activate the license remotely. And there's a whole kind of walkthrough of being able to activate a license without an online connection. You may have to get like a USB flash drive. It is convoluted. Once the license is activated, you don't have to be online after that. So once it's activated, you can take your computer offline, and Cubase doesn't call home to look for the license once it is activated. So once you activate it once, at that point you could just simply take your computer offline. But there is a method for people that never want to have their computer online. And it is convoluted, but, it's, having your computer online, it can simplify things for you. Okay, so we have just a question. So it says from Val Lee. So it says, yo, Greg, I know this is maybe a bit advanced, but is it possible to set up a MIDI track to be triggered by an audio, example, drums, triggering drum samples with just hitting the drums? So it would have to be kind of rendered, but you can accomplish it quite easily. So let's say if I want to do like a drum replacement scenario, so it's not a real-time trigger, but it could be better in a lot of ways. So let's say if I wanted to come here. All right, so let's say I have a drum kit loaded up on this particular instrument. So, and I'm going to switch my audio interface back so you guys can hear it as well. Sorry about that. All right, so I have just a Groove Agent kit loaded up here. All right, so let's say I have drum parts, and let's say I don't like the kick drum sound. What I could do is just double click. We could go into, I'm going to go into the hit points in the sample editor. We could adjust the threshold, and this will allow us to basically not have like tracks bleed through. So if I wanted to just listen, where you can see maybe the toms bleeding through and the snare. So once I have that done, we could go to the Create tab here, and I'm going to say let's create MIDI notes. And I want to put this on C1. And I'm going to put it onto the first selected track where I have my Groove Agent kit loaded that we saw earlier. And I hit OK. So now we're triggering the samples. So if I want to look at the instrument here. So if I wanted to mute the kicks, and make the kicks here a little louder, or tune it. Or blend the two together. So while it doesn't do it in real time, it will actually create a MIDI track, so you could change and alter velocities and have a lot of flexibility with that. So when we look at the MIDI data here, we would see that that's just going to be our kick, and we could do that for snare and toms and other drums as well. And it could even carry over the velocities, retaining the dynamics from the original performance. All right, let me get my monitor and computer on here real quick. It's turned off. All right, wonderful to see Peter from Montreal on. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you on the Zoom meetup on Tuesday. All right, wonderful that Gareth could make it onto the live stream from Spain. All right, so we have a question from Harry Olive. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to locate the audio file in Media Bay from an audio clip? Same function like find in pool, but in Media Bay. So I don't think that there's a direct like do the clip here and find it for, in Media Bay, but if we come directly to the file here, so let's say we do, but once it's kind of, let's say if we go to the pool window here, in the pool window itself, we can, find the path that could be replicated in the Media Bay. But I don't think that there's a, direct, find this particular file in a Media Bay. But again, if you're, do anything, if your file management is good, it's really easy just to go, okay, I want to go to this computer, let's say documents, projects, Amos Moses, and go to the audio folder, and then I could see all the audio files that are in that folder. So, I mean, it's pretty easy enough to do. But you may be able to copy the name and search directly there, but I don't know of a way to automatically have that be found in Media Bay. See Gerald Ely just saying group edit, that's useful. So great to see you on, Gerald. All right, we have Madge Deepers checking in from the United Kingdom. Thanks for joining us. So you have a question from Chris Hallam from Athens, Georgia. It says, is it best to avoid importing 4K video files? I found that things run more sluggishly and the video window couldn't keep pace with the audio with 4K files. So it's really kind of the video engine is really, I believe it's designed for, 1080p files. So, most people, I don't know any composers that get 4K video to compose with. It's generally always 1080p for the video file. So I think 1080p would be fine, and you're just kind of putting a lot of unnecessary strain on a computer, on the codecs and to play back that 4K file. Okay, so we see a question from Walter Till. Thanks so far. Is there a way to make a kind of macro to make all tracks in a folder invisible but still see the folder itself? So, I mean, would I don't know if you need to make all those. I mean, you could close the folder and all the tracks are kind of invisible that way. Um, so let me know. Okay, just so and with this, if we go to project, there is track folding. So we can say toggle selected track, and there's key commands for that. So let me know if that's what you want to do, or if you actually want to have all of the files in this folder turn invisible. I mean, we could just go to the visibility tab and just turn off the folder. But if it's just closing the folder, if that gets you to kind of the same thing where all the tracks are not visible. So, but let me know if that makes sense, Walter, or if I'm misunderstanding. Afraid I may be. See, you reckon Dacru Tree of Life says this was really helpful. Thank you. So you're welcome. All right, we see Johnny D saying he's live on a Friday, so great to see you on. All right, we have Manos checking in. He's happy to be able to join today's live stream. Okay, all right, so you see from let me just all right, let me see. I may have make sure I didn't miss any questions and may have jumped farther for me. See, Val Lee just saying, thanks, Greg. I'll try to get the headphones in the control panel. Couldn't find it, but I'll search again. So, yeah, check. It might have to be paired first before it's visible. See, Johnny D just says, it's crazy. I was just looking for a nudge video when I opened up YouTube and saw Greg talking about nudging. Wow. So, glad it was helpful. All right, so Patrick Manuel A just says, thank you so much, Greg. It was a huge time saver. See, Ralph Nelson Tucker is going to make his wife's tea, so that's always a good thing to do. All right, so we have a question. Is it possible to stream Cubase with sound on Discord without using other programs or doing big routing? So a lot of audio interfaces can have, so let's say if I go to my audio interface here, which is a UR24C. So a lot of audio interfaces will have loopback, and you could enable loopback for this. So you could have it set to off. Or doing live casts. So what I do for simplicity and on mine is, there's different, I think Voicemeeter is a popular tool on Windows, and there's equivalents on Mac that allow you to kind of do software routing. I never had much success with it. I'm sure if I spend a lot of time digging into it, I could do that. But what I personally do for my live streams is I use a two different audio interfaces. So I have a mixer with USB output, and I take the audio out from my UR24C connected into a Yamaha mixer. That Yamaha mixer is then connected directly to and my microphone is connected into that Yamaha mixer, and my streaming is done through the Yamaha mixer, and I leave the Cubase interface completely independent. So that's what I do, and I could switch sample rates and don't have to do any weird routing. So. All right, so we see Bruce is late to the show, and so no worries. We're just glad you can make it. And for being tardy, the only thing that you had to do is to hit the like button. So immediately, that's the consequence of being late, Bruce. All right, so we see Walter Till. This is probably just a clarification for the mixer. It says, I meant invisible track also in the mixer. So let's say if I have a number of tracks in the mix console. So one of the things you could do is actually sync tracks to, if you're in the mix console here. So let's say... and I wanted to hide like an entire folder. If we just hold down the shift key, we could go to configurations here. So say, okay, I want to show all the channels. So if I wanted to just hold down, let's say, okay, I don't want to see my inputs here. I'll just take those off. Okay, so I have like my drum folder. So what I could do is just hold down the shift key, and then I could just say, okay, I only want to see the folder, or at this point, so just clicking here, we could just hide and close, just click to the left of the folder name. So let's say I have all my drums here. So if I just click to the left of the folder, so I go to the visibility tab in the mixer, and then we could just hide everything in my drums folder, just that easily. Or if I only wanted to see what's in my drums folder, I could hold down shift. So now, again, hiding it, just click to the left of the folder in the visibility in the mixer. And then you could just come right over here and do that in the lower zone mixer as well. So let me know if that helps. And thanks for the clarification, Walter. All right, we see Nick has to head out early. Thanks for joining us. We hope you're feeling better. Okay, so we just see from Sydney Thurston. Thanks for joining us. Can you make that S on audio clips automatically snap to the first beat of the clip? Okay, so let's say I have... all right, so let's say I have my sync point or snap point. So I double click here. I'll just move this. Okay, so now when I want to snap, so I'm just going to snap this to to beat. So now that particular, so now the beginning of the file is not going to sync, but where that snap point is will. So now that my grid is set to beat, it's only going to snap based on beat. And let's say if I had switched this, if you wanted to only be on beat 1, so I'm just going to change my grid here to bar. And now it's only going to take that snap point and move it to beat 1, the start of the bar, like that. So let me know if that helps, Sydney. All right, so we have Patrick Schulten. Thanks for joining us. All right, Patrick Julian Inspired says very helpful information. Thank you. So we see Johnny D just says, hi Greg, is it possible to move the nudge buttons with the arrows instead of clicking on it? So let's say if we wanted to nudge, I think it's just using control or command plus the left and right arrows. So the arrows will allow you to select the events, but holding down a control or command. So let's say if I want this to go to 1 second at a time, so just control or command plus the left and right arrows, and you could use that for nudging. So try that, Johnny D. All right. All right. So we see from Omega Supreme says, "Sorry guys, it's my first time here, so I'm kind of lost." So how a live stream works, and welcome to the live stream, is you could just ask questions in the chat field, and we just kind of go through in real time answering questions. So if you have any questions on Steinberg products, feel free to ask them. You could always send them in advance via email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. So you could just use that. And again, welcome. And there's no question that's, don't feel intimidated asking a simple question, a complex question. The only bad question is not to ask one. So. Okay, so we see further clarification from Patrick. It says, Greg, 15-minute cue, 16 bar long for each bar. For each bar, first beat and bass note low, select all and duplicate it 4 times. So an entire 15-minute cue, we have notes that we duplicated now. We need to delete, which we duplicated second time. Okay, so let me just come back to, I'll do a new project here. See if we can replicate this. Sorry for misunderstanding, Patrick. Okay, so say 16 bar long. For each bar, first beat is a bass note. Okay, and I'll just make this larger so we can. Okay, so let's say I have this going on. Okay, and I'm just going to elongate. Okay, so it says 16 bars long for each bar. First beat is bass note. Now select all and duplicate 4 times. Okay, so I'll select all of these notes. And I'll just duplicate here. Okay. So let's see, 16 bars long for each bar. First beat is the bass note. Now select all and duplicate it 4 times. So an entire 15-minute cue, we have notes that we duplicated. Now need to delete which we duplicated the second time. All right, so let me see if it's like if we duplicated this here. And see if we could do our group editing. So let's say the second one I want to delete. Let's see if that. All right, so I think in this case, so if you wanted, like, when you delete this note that is going to be deleted in the others, what I would do is, let's say I ungroup this, but just used shared copies. So if I come here, we hit Control K. So I'm not sure if it's like you want to do shared copies. So let's say we do that a number of times. And now when I go to the first one here, let's say I want to delete this note, that we could see that that note will be deleted on all of the subsequent files. So maybe if you come over here and if it's just like taking that second note, so let me know if that makes sense or if I'm still misunderstanding. All right, so we have a question from Madge Deepers. Do you use an Elgato Stream Deck with Cubase, and do you have any tips? Yeah, so on my personal computer, what I do is I do use a Stream Deck. So I know a lot of people originally had set it up with key commands, and the problem is to share like a profile with someone else. It's really contingent on the key commands file. I bought one of the little like profiles for Cubase, and I didn't like it actually. I wanted it to be a little more configurable. So what I did is there's a little MIDI utility where basically you could turn each button. You could have each button on your Stream Deck, transmit a MIDI note. So you can say, okay, put, C1, MIDI channel 1, C sharp, so you could do 128 MIDI notes per channel for 16 channels. You could also have it do, controller messages. So basically when you hit the button, it's transmitting a MIDI note. And then what I did is just come over and I set up a MIDI remote, and I would just hit all of the buttons from the different Stream Deck. So what I did is, and you obviously on the Stream Deck you could have menus. So on mine, I have like a file menu. So you can say, okay, I want to go file, new project, and where we see like the little breakout menus, this goes to a folder, and a folder goes to a different screen, and then I could have all these functions on a different screen. I hit the back key, and then I go back to my file menu. I could go to my export menu. So I have it kind of set up based on menus. So if I'm doing editing, I can just go to the edit button, all my edit menus, and then every function is addressable within kind of one simple tap. Then if I needed to go to like a breakout menu or a different breakout menu, they're all available just by hitting tap. So basically each button, there's just search for MIDI utility for the Stream Deck. And then, the Stream Deck software isn't, I didn't worry about graphics on mine. I just wanted to have the actual function because how to discern multiple, icons could be tough, but like the words would always mean the same thing. And I'm like, oh, is that this? Is that, is that sizing applies time stretch, or sizing moves contents, or normal sizing? Here I could just simply have the words. So I have text on all of mine, and I just kind of organized it by all of the menus. And then like when I go into MIDI, I could go to quantizing. I have my quantized presets. I could, undo, redo on a lot of the different keys. So, it could take a little while to set up. The Stream Deck software like isn't so good. I haven't found a way to take like my 32 buttons and make them all the same like background. You have to do each one individually, I think. I haven't tried it in a couple months, maybe, but basically just have it get the MIDI utility, and then that's going to just transmit MIDI data, and you could just, I don't necessarily worry about it. I may, on mine, if you look at it, you'll see like 100, buttons like this going across. I don't necessarily need to see the layout replicated here because I see it on the screen and the labels are on the screen themselves. But I think it's a useful thing to have. So, and it's nice that, it updates and you have nested folders within different groups for control. So, all right, so we see Bruce had already hit the like button, so thanks for that. Okay, so we have Enrico Nocera, just from Rome, says, question, is it possible I accidentally activated some command to prevent MIDI CC from reaching plugins in an instrument track sent from outboard hardware? Cross-checked with other DAW and doesn't happen. So check to make sure, one, if you have like those knobs that are transmitting the MIDI CC, if they're already kind of spoken for in a MIDI remote, the MIDI remote may take priority. If they're already kind of spoken for, if you have it set up for, perhaps those knobs are set up for a Mackie control, that could take priority over hitting a particular instrument. If you go to preferences, we can come over, make sure also if you go under MIDI to MIDI filter that you don't have controllers filtered out here. It's usually just SysX that's filtered by default, but check that. One thing to also check is, as soon as you do have a MIDI track, we could just simply, let's say if I wanted to look at my inspector, go to the MIDI inserts, and then you could have a MIDI monitor here. And then as we transmit different MIDI messages, we should see those MIDI messages and what's being transmitted. So if you don't have this being transmitted, it could just be, make sure that it's actually not set up. So a lot of times if people set up different MIDI remote scripts, those remote scripts can have priority over, because that's taking that MIDI CC message and reassigning it to a particular function by design. So make sure you don't have something like that. And you can check those other things out as well. All right, so we have a question. It's any possibility to see the waves length on sampler slice mode? I can't see the start to end line point. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's in the sampler track, but let's go ahead. See if I still have my sampler track project open and... Yep, here. All right, so I'm not sure if it's in the sampler track. So let's say if I have like an empty sampler track here and I drag and drop a loop. So, we could zoom in and out to see the full audio file directly here. So, and even if I wanted to grab like a much longer audio file, if we drag that in, we could just, hit G and H with the sampler track and we could zoom in down to the sample level. But again, so we could see everything there, but let's say as we slice, so I'll drag this in, and now I've sliced up my audio. So, and even if we zoom in, we could just use this scroll wheel here above and navigate. But let me just reread it. So, but it looks like we could see the start and end point here. So, but let me know if I'm misunderstanding, if you want it in the sampler track or if you want it to be like on the project window in the sample editor. So if it's like a sample editor type thing, we could choose to, auto zoom to the event or clip-based zoom. So if we wanted to be here at that level for that file, and let's say I wanted clip-based zoom, and I want to see everything here. When I jump back, we could just have it, set for, so if we wanted global zoom factors, we could have that set up, as global zoom as well. But you could also choose to have it clip-based so that when you go back to a particular event, that particular sample could automatically, just be based on the clip. So say if I want it clip-based, and now I double-click here. So we could just kind of go back between different zoom settings. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. I'm afraid I am. All right, so we have Bob Demers checking in from Saratoga, New York. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Manos asks, says, my question, is it possible to directly capture audio and video while screen recording Cubase? So it could really, depend upon, like a lot of times if I have like a screen capture software, like if I was using, something like ScreenFlow. So let's say if I start ScreenFlow, so I use for tutorials. Let me see if I, so let's say if I start ScreenFlow, so this is really more of an issue, more of a design of the screen capture software itself. But let's say if I come to applications, and I have ScreenFlow 10 here. So let's say I have that open. Now, when I come to my studio setup, this is how it kind of works on Mac with some of the different devices. We can see that we have Telestream audio capture, that kind of installs a software driver. And if you do it through OBS, let me just quit ScreenFlow here. And if you're using OBS, which is another popular device, you could just come over and add a, audio input capture. And then, you could have it automatically capture the output from Cubase. But a lot of times it's not necessarily Cubase's issue. It's like a lot of times some of the screen captures only work with a microphone, and it's just a limitation, but I do it all the time with ScreenFlow. So I think you're limited to 48K, and the audio isn't great. It's not very flexible. So see, Sydney Thurston says, "Whoa, that's cool. Thank you." So great. I have to go back and remember what I showed Sydney, or maybe it's something else. So, all right. Thanks for letting me know. All right. See, Johnny D just says Greg is such an important ally in this Cubase journey. All right. So we see question. When mixing in Dolby Atmos with Cubase 12 Pro and Apollo 16, do I need to use a dedicated monitor controller, or is the Cubase control room up to the task? So definitely the Cubase control room is, more than up to the task, and there's very few hardware controllers that would do Dolby Atmos correctly. So I think you could definitely do the control room. I think it's essential for doing surround and immersive works. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg from Florida. If a client sends me an audio.wav file and I tempo detect it to sync a drum pattern, should I set the definition to tempo on the audio? Will it unsync tracks they have? All right. So if you wanted the drum pattern to synchronize, so let's say if I come, and we'll just show this quickly here. Okay, so we have no tempo. Map with this. So I'm going to do a quick detection of it. And I'll do an offbeat correction. All right, so if I wanted to sync, and I'm just going to find a downbeat here because I think there's a... All right. All right. So he says, if a client sends me a WAV file and I tempo detect it to sync a drum pattern to, should I set the definition to tempo on the audio? Will it unsync tracks if I have? So, if at this point, if we wanted to, use this as the basis and have like a drum loop follow that. So say, I'll just, all right, so I'll just make a complete travesty here, and let's put this into musical mode. So I want to have this kind of automatically. So, if I want to keep this as the basis, like the original track, I probably wouldn't want to do that. So let me just come and make this less obnoxious. So now this track is in musical mode and it's following the tempo of this, and I may not want the original track to change. If I wanted to change the original track at this point, what I could do is go to audio to advanced, and set definition from tempo. And then once we do this, at this point I could do tempo changes, and the file that we did the tempo detection from would automatically adjust as well. So as we play, so now both files would speed up. But if I didn't do that, I could change the tempo and this would still play back at the original tempo. So the set definition from tempo would allow a tempo detected file to change to other tempos, whereas you may want that to stay the same and have other files, sync to that. And if that's the case, then don't use the set definition from tempo. That way the tempo extracted from the original source, the other tracks will then sync to that tempo that was extracted from the original file. All right, so Patrick, Emmanuel A asks, Greg, I was thinking about this. You're the only person who can answer this. Have you ever met A.R. Rahman? Spoke with him. Does he use Cubase? Because I heard he is best friend of Hans Zimmer. So I'm not sure if they're so close. I think he's a Logic guy. But one of my friends, a dear friend of mine, Kevin Doucette, works as one of his assistants and has done lots of projects, maybe his right-hand technical guy. He just finished up doing, he spent a year in Dubai working on AR's project, his studio there. So he's been like an assistant for a long time, and he's an avid Cubase user. I know he's always trying to get AR to switch. I haven't heard recently, but I think he's a Logic guy, but I'm not absolutely sure. So I know that Hans may have given him some space after he started in the U.S., but I'm not sure if they're, super tight friends, but I'm sure they're friendly. Hans is always super supportive of everyone in the community. And AR is so incredibly talented. All right, so we have Kai Nunert from Munich checking in. Thanks for joining. See, Valley says he got the AirPods to work with Cubase. A lot of latency, as you said, but it works. So that's great. Thanks for letting us know, Valley. All right, so we see a question. When you do your drums in one MIDI track, how can you split it up to single tracks? Okay. So let me just jump to this project. Okay, so I have multiple MIDI notes here. So I'll drag this pattern out. So we see multiple MIDI notes. So if I wanted to split each of those drum sounds to different MIDI notes, what we could do is come up to our studio, or I'm sorry, MIDI menu. And let's just go to dissolve part. So here we can say separate pitches, and I'll say process. And at this point, it will automatically split each note so that each note is on its own track. And if it's an instrument track, it'll automatically load up a new instance of the instrument with the same presets so that everything could be independently done. So once again, just come over to select the event, go to MIDI, and then choose dissolve part. And we'll choose separate pitches. And it'll be done just like that. All right, wonderful to see Michael Romanowski from Coast Mastering. He's a wonderful mastering engineer. He only won like 3 Grammys last year. So great to have you on, Michael. Hope you're doing well. All right, so we see Grant Nicholas on. All right, it says, hey, Greg, similar question I had in regards to editing parts. I select multiple parts to edit, but only able to edit one part. How can I edit them all in the same window as opposed to doing one at a time? So, all right, so let me just load up a quick, maybe like an orchestral thing just to kind of show this. Let's see if I have one. I'll just open it. All right, so let's say we have a number of parts here. All right, so I'm going to select my strings, and let's go into our key editor. So as soon as we do this, we could just choose to, so here we can see all of our different parts. I could choose to colorize them based upon not just velocity, but by part, so that we could see the different colors for different events. So here, as we're doing editing, we could see, so, once we're here, we could actually just kind of see the particular event that we're editing. Let me see if it's, let me make sure it's visible. But usually we see the, and then as you click on one voice, that will become the active voice, unless if you wanted to edit all of these together, just think of it as being, as soon as you select a particular voice, then you're editing all of those parts. And there's a lot of consequences if you just kind of do this. I could select multiple events here. So let's say if I select these, I can move them all together, and that's just by, just selecting all of the events, but you could have one of them kind of be the active part as we select here. So I could, switch between viola, violin 1, 2, cello, and bass, like that. So let me know if that's what you want to do, Grant. And it's great to see you on the live stream. I hope you're well. We still have to get together since you're on the East Coast again. I hear Daryl's in town, so maybe we can all hang out together. All right, so we see a question from John Costigan. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped on me. It says, hello, Greg. Brain cramp question. I added a 22 beats per minute slower tempo change in the song section after recording the fretless bass part. Can I salvage it? So, as long as the performance is, so let me just jump to a particular project here. All right. So I added a 22 beats per minute lower tempo change in the song section after recording the fretless bass part. Can I salvage it? So, I mean, you could always just, take the particular. So if it was recorded, so if it's just that if it was recorded 22 beats per minute slower, or if there's a tempo change that's causing it to be slower. So let's say if we have tempo track here, I'll just move this up to the top. All right, so we'll activate tempo. Let's say it's going to be 100. And all of a sudden, we just have like a tempo change at this point of, we go from 100 to 80 beats a minute. So if everything is, if it's just following the tempo change, you could select the node on tempo and just delete it like that. So if it's in musical mode and everything was kind of following, you could do that. If it's, if it was recorded at 22 beats a minute and you're like, oh, I didn't mean to slow it down and I wanted it to all be a steady tempo, if you do the, tempo detection and then just do, go to audio to advanced and at that point do the set definition from tempo, you could definitely speed it up. And it's easier processing wise for the quality of the processing to speed up than to slow down. So you should be able to, easily be able to just take that portion of the file and speed it up in musical mode. Or if it's just that, you accidentally threw the tempo change in and now like all your MIDI stuff is off, just come again over here and, select the tempo node from the tempo track and just delete. And then, I think that will take care of it. If it was just kind of I accidentally put a 22 beat per minute tempo change, that should do it for you. So we just see, Greg, is there any other options like Control K and Control G for editing MIDI? So there's, like thousands of little options. So it's hard to kind of, pull one out to think of to highlight. But if there's a particular thing that you want to do, I'd be happy to kind of share like how to do that and a technique to get there. So. All right. So we have a question. All right. So we have Studio Kino just saying, ciao, Greg. So thanks for joining us on our live stream today. All right. So a question. Hello, just hopped in. I have tried to find a way to only show certain tracks in the mix console with one key command, but have not been successful. Is this possible? So yeah, you could do that. So let's say if I only want to show, so if I'm here and I only want to see selected tracks. Okay, so if we come to our little settings here, we could actually, let's just, thought it was available in here as well. So let's say like in our mix window, we could just come and if you go to and just go right here to channel visibility, we could say, show only selected channels. So, if So, there's different visibility options that are available. So if you only want to see input channels or you want to hide input channels, you could do that. And there's different visibility options that are around. So, at that point we could, say, okay, I only want to see, these particular visibility changes. So, like on the mixer, if you want to, again, just come right over here to the visibility agents, you could do that. And you could do that also in the main project window. So, you could do it based on channel type. You could also say, show only tracks with particular names if you used a logical editor. But if you could let me know, like how you want to specify which tracks are shown and which are hidden. But you could do that quite easily using different visibility agents as well. All right. All right, so we see Storm Stoikos ask, is there a big difference between Cubase 10.5 Pro and Cubase 12 Pro? So yeah, there's probably about 500 new features. So there's a number of new plugins. Cubase 11 added, like the Squasher plugin added more capabilities with zones. It added a scale assistant in the MIDI editor. Where it also has a lot more kind of batch processing and like a batch export capabilities. It added a new font in the score editor. Cubase 12 is, obviously a new licensing system, new plugins. Like in 11, you had Supervision that was introduced, which is an amazing metering plugin. I think 11 also added, or it might have been 10.5 or 11, where you added the new audio engine capabilities of doing 64-bit floating point precision. So 12 added, also more editing capabilities of multi-track audio warping on the project window, Apple M1 native. So there's probably about 500 new features from 10.5 to 12. And also Cubase Pro 12 does Dolby Atmos support. All right. So we see from Paul Claridge. Hi, Greg. How to uninstall an instrument from Halligan Sonic SE. I downloaded it and installed some by accident, ones I don't have a license for. All right. So what I would do is just go to the Steinberg Library Manager. And you'll see under Halligan. And all you have to do is find the ones that you don't have the license for, and then just click on Remove. So, and this is a utility that's installed with every version of Cubase. So, just again, go to the Library Manager. You could see like Cubase Nuendo content, but the Halligan instruments, you should see them all listed here. Kind of hover it over and then click Remove, and that should remove the association of that particular sound set from being seen by Halligan or Cubase. Gerald E. Leach just says, I love it. Greg knows so many cool things that when someone says, thanks for the cool tip, Greg says, you're welcome. What was that? So sometimes it's like, it may be referring to something I talked about 15 or 20 or 30 minutes before. So I try to remember it, but, it's a lot of questions coming at you when you're doing this. And John Koskian says, I agree. We should call it Greg Base. So I think it's a Cubase index, so we'll give all the credit to Jan. He deserves it. All right. All All right, so we see from Zofo, can you assign the drum tracks you split to a group track? So let's say if it's, I'll just jump back. So I think it might be regarding this. So if this is the split feature that you're referring to, so let's say, okay, we'll take this. So we'll go to MIDI, dissolve part. We'll separate the pitches. And then once that's done, we could probably just say add group channel to selected channels. So let's see if we could even do it in a macro here. So we'll go to key commands. Let's see if it'll wait for us. So we'll do a new macro. Let me just look under MIDI. So we'll add this command. I think this might be under mixer. Selected tracks to. Add selected to group channel. Sorry, let me just open it up one more time. All right, I'll just start it again. Sorry about this. All right, so just see if it's. Okay, so let's see if we can run this macro now. Let's see if that does it. Yep, and let's see if there are outputs. Yep, so you could do it like that if you wanted to. So check that out. All right. All right. All right, so Bob Demers asks, I upgraded from Cubase LE to Cubase Pro. Is it okay to install LE to recover the memory? Also, is it okay to delete the download manager content? So once everything has been installed, it's okay to delete the content. Usually you could do you could uninstall Cubase LE. There's nothing in there that's not in Cubase Pro. So if you're kind of short on hard disk space, you could definitely do that. All right, so Bruce Bruton asks question: has the keyboard shortcuts changed from Cubase 11 to 12? So there's for the new features that there's some additional keyboard shortcuts have been added, but I don't think the keyboard shortcuts have changed. I realize that people have those keyboard shortcuts ingrained in muscle memory, so that would be a kind of a cardinal sin to switch keyboard shortcuts on people. Okay, so we see from Grant Nicholas. It says, thanks, Greg. Yes, let's do it. I wasn't clear. Same track, but repeated parts. Okay, so let's say he's in the drum editor. So let's say maybe he's here. And it's repeated parts. So I'm not sure if so let's say if I select this event and I hit like Control K, and let me just undo that. Sorry. So if I copy this event, and I think we could even do it holding Control or Command plus Shift. So if I hold Command plus Shift and drag, now if I wanted to make, and not sure if I'm missing kind of let's say we're in the drum editor, and if I wanted to take notes out, so holding Command and Shift while dragging will make ghost or shared copies. So if I delete these notes, we'll see that those notes will all get deleted in every version. So if I undo it, and let's make it bigger so we could see that as soon as we make an edit or a change here, that change is applied to all of the other events. But let me know if you have multiple ones in the drum editor. All right, so you see from Patrick Emmanuel, Greg said AR is incredibly talented. But what does talented in music means? Does it mean writing music, or do they know more about music? Because many of the greats don't know theory, but how to measure. So, it's like I think the beauty of music is it's not really quantifiable. I've been fortunate in my life to sit next to Stevie Wonder on the piano bench with him playing piano and singing, and that was an experience I'll never forget. He doesn't read music, so but but it's still, I think it's just being able to convey passion in some form, whether it's in film or music. I think that's what talent is, and being able to convey passion. So, it's like, I'm not worried if someone doesn't know the difference between different French augmented sixth chords, and but if they can move me emotionally, that's great, and I'll consider them talented for being able to do that. So. All right, so Patrick asks, all right, my chat field jumped on me. Let me see if I can find it again. All right, so you just see from Patrick, it says, question, Greg, we have Control G for vertical MIDI editing. Is there anything to edit MIDI horizontally other than Control K? Because it's just copied files. Anything other than that for editing MIDI horizontally? All right, so let's say if we're here, and let me just kind of zoom. All right, so let's say if we go, so I'm not sure if you when you're talking horizontally, if you wanted to just be able to resize particular notes. So let's say if I'm here, we could change the length of all selected notes if you wanted to do that. Or if you wanted to change the start point of all notes. So those are some edits that you could do horizontally for notes, and again, obviously you could just control Command D to duplicate particular areas as well. But let me know if that's kind of what you're wanting to do, so we could change the, horizontally, which I think makes sense. We could change the end of the particular notes, or we could change the beginning of particular notes just by kind of grabbing the edge like so. All right, so we have Sten Sharapov. It says hello from is it Tallinn? It's winter here, so thanks for joining us. Glad you can make it today. All right, so we have a question from Kai Dunert. I have the highest Cubase Pro. How can I be sure that I have all the instruments and libraries installed? I had a feeling there's missing stuff. All right, so if you go to the Steinberg download assistant, and this is where the vast majority of people get their Cubase from. Just get this open here. All right, so once you enter your download access code, you'll see in My Products here. And then you could actually just, you'll see My Product Downloads. Just look here, and you can see that if all of these have been downloaded and installed. So you could just see directly here. So I have everything except 2 demo projects. But when we see this green bar, that indicates that it has been downloaded and installed. So that's how you could tell. All right, so we have Phil Bartlett checking in from Victoria, Australia. He says, love that voice first thing in the morning. Thanks for joining us from Victoria. I got to go to Melbourne and to visit a friend that used to work at our office in Los Angeles in Wangaratta. So had a wonderful time in Australia. So want to go back so badly. All right, so we have Mark Rabin joining us from Montana, and he says his dog Stella says woof. That's great. We hope Stella's doing great and it's not too cold for Stella outside. All right, see Valdez checking out. He's going to be joining us on Tuesday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. All right, so we have a question from Phil Bartlett. I use a Focusrite 6i6. I've been doing it with Cubase 12, and all of a sudden it's not seeing it. I recently installed a Waves bundle. Could there be some sort of conflict? So generally, like a plugin install doesn't really affect the particular, the audio interface. Check first to make sure, that you can see if the computer is seeing it as an option. So if you're on Windows, if you go to your settings, and just take a look to see if it's being recognized by the audio, by the computer itself. That's good. If on a Mac OS, if you just kind of come here, you can see all of your available audio devices listed directly here. And make sure, sometimes it could be like maybe Cubase was started without it, and then at that point see if you see the Focusrite driver listed here. So I'll do this faster next time. So if you go to Studio Setup, see if your Focusrite is listed here. So if it's not being seen by the computer, then Cubase can't see it, and then it would need to see the ASIO driver if you're on Windows, and just make sure that you have the Focusrite 6i6 selected there. If it's not showing up there, then you make sure that you have the USB cable connected, that you didn't necessarily. Sometimes if it's bus powered, make sure it's connected directly to the computer. Try a different USB port on a computer. But generally, as long as the operating system sees it, then Cubase could see it. But I don't think it's going to be related to like a Waves plugin install. I could see if you had maybe another audio interface, that might cause an issue. But generally they coexist. They coexist very well together. So, but if you could check those things, that would be great. And thanks again for joining us so early in the morning. All right, so we have Jeff Zabelski checking in from Chico, California. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Alessandro Ponte is very observant and just says, hi, Greg. Hi, everybody. What's the Silvestri automation I spotted in your macros? So I think I just made a quick, I'll get a call from Alan periodically. He's just such an incredibly warm and generous person. It's just one of my favorite people. It was like, I was like the first time I did a presentation for him, I was like so incredibly thrilled. And he was like, Greg, I'm your biggest fan. I watch every one of your videos. So it was just a thrill. I've been listening to his music for years, decades. But let's take a look at what the macro is. So sometimes, I'll get a call. It's like, oh, I want to do this on a particular thing. So let's see. I think this may be, let's see if it's down here. Silvestri automation. Okay, so I think it was part of a macro where we could, and I may have it on another computer, but it was something where we wanted to, and we think it may have kind of done it with a hardware where if you wanted to bring up the automation, that we could go to the info line and then tab over, so that he could do this with a keyboard shortcut. So I think we went to the info line, and then at this point we could tab over two values to like raise or lower by a dB. So I think that's what the macro was doing for Alan. So, but good eye. See, Zofo just telling me that I rock. Thanks, Greg. So you're welcome. All right, so we have a question from Jeweler DeRocket. I believe he's in Ontario, if I'm not mistaken. Hi, Greg. Hope you're doing well. How can I play audio in Cubase and scroll back to any bar without affecting what I'm playing? Example, playing bar 14 and selecting bar 4 while playing in another track. Thanks. Okay, so generally, for the sake of sanity, a lot of times, so let's say if we're here, so let's say, while we're playing, I could rewind while it's still playing forward. So we could do that, and let me just and it just says example playing bar 14 and selecting bar 4 while playing in another track. Thanks. So let's see if I come here, like if I wanted to, let's see if I could do just kind of the independent track loop. Here, I know, let's see if it might only be in the MIDI editor. I know in the MIDI editor we can, all right, so let's say let's see if this is in, yeah, so it's I'm going to activate the independent track loop. Okay. And let me so I'm going to turn this icon on. And while this is open, let's see if this, okay, so let's say I wanted this to be in bar 4. And I wanted to do like 8. I want to do 4 bars, and let's activate the independent track loop. So if I have the editor open, so let's say I'll do this measure 8. So this way I could choose this to always loop independently of my play position. So while the rest of the tracks continue to play forward, this one event can just be on its own independent loop. So the rest of it's playing forward. This will just kind of continue to loop over and over again. So you come up with some interesting polyrhythmic parts. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do. And I'm sure you could have a part where that sounds correct intentionally. So. All right. So we see a question. Says, "Thanks for responding to my question. Could you demonstrate how you would set up one command to show a track of your choice in the mix console from the project window? That would mean a lot." All right. So let's say if I only want to see like this track. Oh, sorry. Hate that feature. All right. So say I only want to see like this one particular track. All right. So let's create a macro for this. Right. And we'll go to channel and track visibility. All right, so let's see if this will. So I want to see the bass track in the mixer. So let's come here to macros. Then that will only show that particular track in the mixer. And there's also just the, if you go to the channel settings, you can see a tremendous amount of just that particular track where you can see like all of your plugins and inserts. But if you only want to see like the selected track in the mixer, so let's say, okay, I want to have the guitars only visible. So again, just show only selected tracks in mixer. And then you can do that. And again, just to create that macro, come to key commands. Devices to mixer, and then channel and track visibility. Agents show only selected channels. Let me know if that's what you want to do. All right, my chat field jumped. Let me just find my spot. All right. All right, so John Costigan discovered that you could map up to 99 markers with the GoToMarkerX function. And that Mark Rabin figured out how to colorize markers. That's great. All right. So we see a question from Tony. Any way to set up a key command to load a specific track preset? Let's say my favorite groove agent with a comp and distortion insert. Want to load up every time I press Control Alt D. Is this possible? So I don't know of a way to automatically do that, but I've kind of asked. I'm kind of lobbying for like a default track or default set, like when you add a groove agent track, that this could be added. When you add a an audio track, these plugins could be loaded automatically. So I've kind of asked for that, and I'm kind of lobbying for that as a feature. So I'm not sure if it'll be implemented in the future, but I've been kind of working at it. But I don't know of a way to have the track preset automatically loaded with a particular keyboard shortcut. And Mark Rabin just saying, if you do just a track preset, but you can't really call up the track preset with a particular track preset. So. See, Spike Williams says he hates the word talent. Non-musicians imagine we are born with the ability to play an instrument or write music. We have to put in hours, years to achieve what we do. So it's like my friend Greg Lukens, who's blind, says, "Yeah, I work really hard to make it look easy." So, but so I'm trying to get my son to. He's tearing it up on bass. I got him like a little ukulele bass for Christmas a couple years ago, and he's just like getting mind-bogglingly good. I'm like, do it now while you have all the time before you have to have a job and stuff. So, but yeah, it's a lot of time that's put in to make it look easy. See, Patrick just says, Greg, super explanation about talent, and says, yeah, you're blessed. So I feel incredibly lucky. I've gotten to hang out with so many of the people that inspired me to pursue my career. All right, Mark Rabin says, before he forgets, he wants to wish everyone happy holidays. So thank you for that, Mark. All right. So you see from Patrick, just says, Greg, on Logical Editor, we edit MIDI parts horizontally. Right. I asked, without the Logical Editor, is there anything that could possibly do? Like, can I group parts horizontally for removing, adding things? So, some things you could do is, let's say, I'll just draw in some silly notes here. All right. So, if you wanted to, select like all of the same note, you could hold down Shift and double click. And there's a lot of stuff that you could also do just using kind of the scroll wheel here. So let's say, okay, I wanted to adjust, the length of each of these selected notes. So even if I just wanted to, come over here and adjust the start position of those particular notes, or the end position of notes like that. You could adjust the length, or if you wanted to adjust the pitch, velocity. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you could do just from the info line. And I'm just using my mouse scroll wheel. So if I wanted to group notes together, you could do stuff like that as well. In getting into the Logical Editor, some of the things you could do kind of from more of a horizontal perspective would be, okay, I want to, take all of the notes, and let's say I wanted to adjust the position. The position. I'll try not to bite my tongue. So if we wanted to subtract, 1 second or 2 seconds from particular notes, or if we wanted to just add, the position of different notes, we could come here and just say, okay, we want to add, let's say, an eighth note. We could just kind of nudge those, or we could subtract or multiply by. So there's lots of, or I want to set all these to be exactly like every note to be a 16th note long. So if I select all the notes in the project, we can make them all 16th note long, or we could, just come over here and be able to do a lot of different things horizontally with position from the Logical Editor as well. And you could even randomize between certain values if you wanted to go like 20 or 20 plus, 20 minus for random positions as well. See, Jeff Savelski's getting all music theory on us. So is an augmented sixth chord from a minor chord, a minor seventh? Okay, but it sounds like a dominant seventh if the third is a major third, but who cares? It's simply just a sound to little Stevie. You can shoot me now. I'm diminishing. All right. All right, so we see Phil just says response to Greg about the Cubase not seeing the Focusrite 6i6. I'm on an iMac and the computer is seeing the interface but not Cubase. So, so if generally, Cubase works with the core audio drivers on the Mac. So if you're not seeing it here, then it's not fully being seen in the Mac. But so if it's not, let me know if so if it's not seeing it there, then that these are all presented by the operating system. So if you could tell me if it's not showing up in the ASIO driver, then I'd be let me know that. But if it's not showing up there, then it would be check to make sure it's if there's a power, or if there's a power plug that you could plug in, or if it's just bus powered, maybe it's kind of underutilized, or maybe there's another program that's not releasing it, maybe some type of proprietary program that's not allowing other programs to see it as well. And you could always try to toggle the release driver when application is in background and see if that makes a difference for you. All right, just reading through comments. All right, we see Michael Teams has made it finally, so hopefully you'll start dispensing of virtual ice cream. All right, so we just see, thanks for your demonstration. Is there a way to implement the selection in the macro instead of having to select the tracks manually before the macro? So if you wanted to, so let's say, and I think this is with seeing the tracks. So let's say I wanted to have any track that had the word guitar that contained GTR. So we could do this in a project logical editor. So let's say if I go to a project logical editor and go to setup, so we're going to say we're going to select tracks. So we'll say media type. We want to, I think we'll see if we could just do select name contains GTR. Okay, so let's say if I hit apply, we could select those. Then we could just say, okay, at this point I want to run a macro. And we'll do the so let's come over here. And then at this point, you could run the macro. Let me see. thought it would show up. Let me just check the name of the macro again. So, but at that point, you could say, select everything that's guitar, and then, I have to restart the program to see the macro, but then you could just have it run the particular macro for you. So you can say, anything that has guitar or bass. So you could choose it by name there. So if you wanted to do it in a project logical editor, you could do that. All right, just reading through. All right, you see Michael Pierce is working late tonight, so glad you can make it and join us. Hope you're doing well. It's great to see you on Tuesday. Mark Rabin is looking forward to Michael Pierce's soup suggestion for today. Okay, so we just see question from Jeweler the Rocket. I have a live performance. I want to have 2 tracks, one for the songs and the second one for background music. How can I jump to the second track gradually without stopping the first track? Okay. So 2 tracks, one of the songs, and the second one for the background music. I want to. All right. So one way might be to just have, maybe have one as a sampler track. So let's say if we do a new project and I wanted to have, let's say, all right, so let's say this is like a backing track here. All right. And then let's say if I wanted to have more of a, like at this point, I'm just going to reread this, see if it's helpful. So on one, I have 2 tracks, one for the songs and one for the background music. How can I jump to the second track gradually without stopping the first track? So if I'm here, let's say I'm just stopping this. Then I'm just bringing in like a fader and playing a note. So maybe if you have the ability of maybe triggering one as a sampler track, that, let me know if that could make sense for you. So you could just kind of play it and, have a MIDI control adjust the volume on it in real time. All right. All right. So we have another request from Patrick. So let's see if we can get this sorted out. Okay, so he wants me to draw in 6 blank measures. Okay, so Patrick just says, Greg, draw 6-bar long empty MIDI now on key editor. Draw a note on beat 1 for each bar now. Okay, so let me just draw in note on beat 1. Okay. On beat 1 for each bar now, select all and copy and paste it on 16th, 8th note grids to make some rhythmic variation. Okay, so let's say we want to copy, right? Select all, copy and paste it on 16th note grids, make some rhythmic variation now. All right, so let's say, okay. All right, and let me just put this here. Let's say I'll paste, and I'll just change the pitch. And paste from there. Okay. All right, so it says now need to delete, which was copied the second time. All right, so if it's on different pitches, so if you didn't want to obviously undo, you could do that, but if it's still selected, so let's say if I undo, so right now the second note is selected, I could just delete, and those particular notes are deleted. So, but if we want to redo kind of all of our functions here, so let's say, so in that scenario, I mean, you might have to kind of manually do stuff, but if you know what the position of the note is, so let's say we know that this note here is starts at 122 and ends at 142. We could go to the logical editor and we'll choose delete notes. This position is inside bar range. One 2.2 to 1 4.2. All right, and I probably need to set it to inside bar range. Sorry. All right, no, sorry. Let's just switch this to 1.22. We'll say 1.4.2. Okay, so let's say I'll just. So once you kind of find that particular range, you could probably just delete it there. But, I mean, it could be faster to manually delete. So, or let's just say that would delete notes. Maybe that start at. Let's see if we can get this, but you could probably do. So if you wanted to do something like this, I think you could, have, like set it for inside the range of the particular notes. All right, let me just go ahead and move on. So thanks for all the great questions from everyone. See how we're doing on time. All right, so we're doing great. All right, so Michael Teams at 3:30 was like number 100. Thank you. Glad you could join us, Michael. All right, so Michael Pierce's soup of the day. Of course, as soon as I started reading it, my chat field jumped on me. All right, it's called leek and potatoes. Slice and sweet leeks in butter and oil. Add garlic and potatoes. Add stock. Simmer till cooked. Swirl on cream and blend. Season and serve with chives and crusty bread. Oh, he sounds good. Now I want soup for dinner. All right, so Gerald Ely says he walked away from the computer for a while. Now it's coming back, and there's food and beer flying all over the place. So, okay, so Kai Noonert asks, is it possible to higher the contrast of the note lines in very audio, white and dark piano, and show there's only the key we are in, like in the MIDI? All right, so let's come to. All right, so I'm going to drag my MIDI to the chord track. All right, so we're in. All right, so let me just. So you want to higher the contrast of the note lines in very audio, the white and dark piano, and show only the key we're in. So if we come to, so I think that is going to be, I don't know of a way to adjust that, but we may be able to go to preferences, and it's good to user interface to track and mix console, or let me go to color schemes, and let's get to editor area background, and let's make this whiter. So as we do this, then you could have more contrast. So once again, preferences to user interface to color scheme, and change the editor area background so we could have contrast there. And the second question was, and show only the key we are in, like the MIDI editor. So now we could go to so it's, when we come here, we could choose, I don't think that we can restrict the key, because but we can snap the pitch editing. So let's say I'm in the key of G in this song. So now as we do the editing, it's only going to allow me to skip to the letter G. But obviously when we're doing very audio editing, it's often because a note is out of key. So if a note was out of key and it kind of had been the segment was indicated in a pitch that was out of key, it would be invisible, and then we couldn't move it to be in key. So, so I don't think that there's a way for, to hide the particular keys, but you can do the snap pitch editing right here. So we could say, and to show note scale guides. So here we could actually just see the particular notes that are in the scale. So as soon as we turn this, we'll notice that the grid lines will change. So now we know that we could move it directly to only the white notes are in key, and the other notes, the ones that are kind of darker background, are out of key once we see the show scale notes. So give that a try. And again, the preference, come over to preferences here, and editor area background, and I'll just switch that back to my defaults. All right, you see Michael Teams is on the case with his ice cream distribution. Let's see, Vagalarian says, that did it. Thanks a lot. You just sped up my workflow. So great. All right. Wonderful to see Jay from Connecticut from Secret Studios on. Glad you could join us today. All right. Uno Memento is passed on Carolean beer for everyone because Tuesday's Finland's Independence Day, and that's when they celebrate. Well, have a great Independence Day. I got to sit next to the ambassador to Finland on a plane once. She was pretty interesting. All right, so you just see from Secret Studios, hi Greg, quick side Yamaha product question. I'm trying to help my girl's dad with his PSR S910 keyboard, not longer loading the MP3 or WAV files at 44.1 320K from USB. Any known issue? So unfortunately, I don't have access to a PSR keyboard, so I haven't tried it. But if you want to email me, I could pass it on to my counterpart in the keyboard part of Yamaha in America, and I could probably get an answer for you on that. So, but I've never actually touched one. I've kind of been homebound since COVID, so I don't get to go out to music stores and check out stuff. See, Jeff Sabelski practiced about 3 hours yesterday, so he gets to party today. So that's good. All right, so Jeff Sabelski is whack job number 106 on the likes. Wonderful to see Sable Winters. You missed learning of what Sable bought for her gadget of the month during Black Friday. So we'll have to wait for December for that on the Zoom social meetup. But glad you could join us today. And we have Daniela. Great to see you on the live stream. Great to see you on the Zoom social on Tuesday. All right, so we have a question. How to use MuseScore, Music XML, and Cubase. How can I load such files in a project? So you could just come directly over to import Music XML files. So once again, File menu to import Music XML. And that's almost more like kind of a graphic representation of the notes. So, but you could do that, and you could also... Some people will prefer for more expressive, like, MIDI information with like different MIDI controllers to import a MIDI file. I don't think that's carried over into Music XML, but is in a standard MIDI file. But once again, you could just come over to File and import MIDI file or Music XML. All right, so we just see, hi bro, how to make a vocal. So really all you have to do is, once we have an audio interface connected to the computer, we need to make sure that we have, and it's probably going to be if it's an audio interface, you could plug a microphone into the audio interface. You want to go into the inputs and say, okay, we have my inputs 1 and 2 will be coming here. And let's say if I was doing a mono, I could add a bus. So generally vocals will be recorded with a single microphone. That'll be a mono source. And our mono source, we can say we wanted to go to input 1. Let's add an audio track. And we'll select our mono in that we defined. And we want this to go out of our stereo out, and then we could just have that track record enabled and hit record, and you'll be recording your vocal just like that. Okay, so we have a question from Rich B. Is it possible to have different quantize and swing values for notes in an event, or must these notes and events be placed on separate MIDI tracks for this to work? So you could definitely do it on one track. So let's say if we add an instrument track, and just for demonstration purposes, I'll say, okay, let's do 16th notes. So it's really whatever is selected as you're quantizing. So let's say I want to select all of these. So at this point, I could apply, I will come over to my quantize. So, and let's go ahead and just kind of open up our quantize value here. So let's say I want 0 swing, or we'll do 14% swing. So I'll quantize, and it's only going to quantize these notes because those are the only notes selected. I wanted these notes to be quantized 46%. So only those notes were shifted. And these notes I want to be quantized 80%. So now when we quantize, we could have, so whatever is selected. So if we select all of the notes, so say we come here, whatever is selected, that will be quantized to different amounts. So it doesn't have to be on independent parts. It's just whatever is selected and quantized, those values will be applied to the particular notes for you. So you could have multiple quantized multiple quantized swing feels and different quantized presets within the same part. So if you want to quantize like the left hand of a piano differently than the right hand, you could do that very easily. All right, so you see Michael Teams has granted my family, myself, 1 gallon of Dutch chocolate ice cream. So thank you very much. Looking forward to that. After talking for 4 hours, my throat could always use it. All right, so we have Ton Studio Thomas Molnar. How can I sync an audio drum loop to another imported song with another tempo? For example, I have to replace the drum loop via spectral layers to the other song. I found no answer. So, all right, so let's say I'll just throw in a new song here. All right, so let's say I want to take like a song and throw in just a quick drum loop with it. All right, so I'll just... All right, so say I don't know what the tempo is of this particular file, so I'm just going to drop it down here. And I turn on my metronome. So I'm going to just do a tempo detection. Analyze. All right, so we kind of have our tempo, so let's say... And right here, we want it to be, this is where we want our 4/4 to be. So we have a slight pickup note. So now if I want to drop a drum loop in, I'll just come over here. Find just something. All right, so I'm going to drop this loop in. And what we want to do now at this point is we can see that this isn't fitting. So what I want to do is just to place this into musical mode. And now as I drag this across, so if it wasn't in musical mode, so as soon as you drag the loop in, just place it into musical mode, and then that could lock up automatically to the particular tracks that you want. So once again, select the loop, and then just enable musical mode. Just reading through comments. So thanks for all the great questions. If you learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. See, Kai Nooner says, thanks again. That you really helped me. So glad to help. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so we see from Jazzy Lamel says, Greg, every time I try to select one of my tracks to change color, when I first open Cubase it works, but sometimes when I do the same procedure, it won't let me do it if I click onto one of the tracks. So often what happens is if you have an event selected, that will have the highest priority. So let's say I go to grab my paint tool and I color in, I want it to be blue. My track, even though it's selected, didn't change blue because this event was selected. So let's say if we want to, so make sure that no events are selected. So if you just click in an empty space and then the track is selected, then the track will be changed as opposed to just the selected event. So make sure that you actually have the track and only the tracks and no events selected, because if an event is selected, that will get the coloring priority over the track. All right. So we have a question. My DX7 Mark II has a maximum MIDI velocity output of 100, value 2 on MIDI monitor. Is it somehow possible to increase it to 127? And thank you for all the years of wisdoms. Greetings from the Netherlands. This is Jorn Ludegerink. All right, so what you could do, and that was just kind of a wacky limitation of the DX7, that it was only going to, do velocities from 0 to 100. So instead of the full MIDI specification, so probably they wanted to make sure that it wouldn't clip or something. But let's say if we add a MIDI track or an instrument, and we want to get kind of the full value of the DX7. So what I would probably do is if we come over here to the input transformer, and we could do this for the track, or globally if you're using that as your only controller. And let's go to the panel, and we're going to create a input transformer. So let's say we want to take value 2, which is velocity, and we want to take value 2 and multiply by 1.27. So now every time that you hit 1, so that way every value you could get the full range of the different velocities. So every time that you hit a fixed velocity of 100, that could multiply by 1.27, so that would be 127 if you hit. So there isn't, so it's only going to be transmitting those particular ones. But if you wanted to get to the full range of velocity values on instruments to get, those different sounds, you could try that. That would be probably the easiest way. So once again, go to, we could save this as a preset. So we'll come here. So again, we're going to take every input, every velocity value, and then increase it by 1.27. So, and again, we just come to the input transformer right here. You could save that globally or as a track or in the project, and then just call that up as a preset. So you want this to be transform, value 2 is the velocity, and then value 2 multiplied by 1.27. All right, so we see from Zool's Epic Music. So when you have the mixer in the lower quadrants showing, can you customize the tracks it shows like you can in the main mixer windows? Yeah, so let me just open up kind of a larger project here with different groups and stuff like that. See, Jazz Dude's been very vigilant with his moderation here. That's great. I think I'm catching up. All right. All right, so as we are looking at it here, so you'll see these 3 dots. So make sure that you have those 3 dots, and then you could say, for here, I only want to see, audio channels. So you could just customize all of your different tracks right here. So you have your channel filter types. And if you don't see that, again, click right here, and that will give you extended controls on the top. All right. All right, so Danielle, we see that her husband is sending greetings. Yeah, it was very nice to meet him. Very interesting guy. So thanks for joining us on the Zoom meetup. All right, so I think I'm caught up. Let's go to some of the questions that were sent in advance. I'm gonna get a quick sip of water, help my throat. All right, let me just go to our list of questions that were emailed in. Thanks for all the wonderful questions we've had. All right, so we had a question. How to switch between multiple parameter pages for a single device in the MIDI remote. If I wanted 8 channels of faders to do multiple functions in the MIDI remote system. All right, so let me just go ahead and show that. Okay, so when we're in the MIDI remote system, let's say I have my Choy Sauce controller here. So right now I have my Choy Sauce controller configured for the quick controls. So if I have a channel selected here and we open up our quick controls, at this point I could easily control the quick controls, and if I wanted to easily say, okay, I want to have a particular plugin on this. So let's say I go to my compressor, and now when I come to the compressor, and this is the active window, my quick controls can do this. But what if I wanted to have another bank where it just did like my send levels for all of the tracks? How could we do that? So if we go to the mapping assistant, we can come over here and we see mappings, and we see this little plus sign. So this will allow us to add a new mapping page. So I'm going to call this mapping page sends. So we'll hit OK. And so once we do this, we now want to, and I'm just going to do this on the correct controller. Okay, so hit OK. So now I have 8 faders here, and I want to assign these faders to my send levels, for example. So I'm going to, again, come over here to my mapping assistant. I'll go to selected track and let's go to send slots. And I'll say, let's go to send level 1. I'll come here to send level 2. Go to fader 3. Here's send level, etc. So let's go to fader 4. So fader 5. And we can just double click. All right, so and we'll do 7 and 8. So now we've mapped a new page for sends. So when we're in our editor, I can now come over, let's say, to our send levels. And let's just add a number of effect sends. All right, just for demonstration purposes here. All right, so now when I adjust, I can adjust all of my different sends. Now, if I wanted to go back to my quick controls, I could click here, and now I'm controlling my quick controls. I click here, and now the same faders are controlling my sends. Now, if I had buttons on the particular controller, my choice sauce doesn't, but if I wanted to switch, we could also go to selected tracks, and let's go to, so we'll scroll down to our selected tracks and go to actions. Let me just find mapping page actions. So here we could go to, particular mapping pages, or we could go to the previous or next mapping pages if we wanted to. So this way I could have a button that would switch directly between different mapping pages, or be able to just, switch randomly. So if I have one single 8-channel device, I can say, okay, now it's going to do my sends. I wanted to control my channel strip. I wanted to control quick controls or focus quick controls. We could just come right over here and switch those different parameters that are being addressed. All right. Another question that was mailed in: how to add delay to a section of a vocal file easily without doing automation. Okay, so let's say we'll play a little bit of this track, and I just want to throw a quick delay in on the vocal. Let me just revert this quickly. Sorry about that. Probably destroyed it with different editing here. Okay, so let's say I want to just throw in like just a little delay. So say where she said mind there. So I want to take this. I'm just going to grab the range selection tool. I'm going to select the range, and I'll just take my snap off. And what I'm going to do now is just go to audio, to plugins, and I'll just throw delay in. So I'll just go to default delay, and I'll just throw mono delay in, and let's make it a dotted quarter note. So now when we play it,
I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until now, that was okay.
And if I wanted to just, adjust the level of the mix of that down to tweak it a little bit, I could just do that.
I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until now.
So that way it's basically just processed that particular file with that plugin on it. And even after opening up the project years later, I could still at any time, go to F7 and have the clip selected. And even if I did multiple, I could remove them independently. So just select the area that you want the delay to be in. And at that point, go to your audio menu to plugins and choose the particular delay, and at that point it will be rendered into the file without having to do any fancy automation. All right, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. Having the studio computer connected to the internet or not? Over time, I've discovered that several apps, such as browsers, word processing apps, etc., increasingly to call to home to check for the latest version. The ongoing internet traffic is becoming an increasing problem with audio dropouts. What is Greg's experience with having the studio connected to the internet or not? I have started shutting down the internet. Very best, Jan. So I know a lot of people, there's different schools of thought. There's a lot of people who've been doing this for a long time that don't have any internet access on their computers. Some people will turn it off when they're doing their DAW. So it could really depend upon the actual devices that are connecting. So Wi-Fi can be more problematic than using like a wired internet connection, because Wi-Fi is kind of sometimes periodically just looking, it'll send kind of like a little message like, I'm here, where's the network? Oh, I'm here, where's the network? Oh, let me find you, and that could be fluctuating, and that could cause more dropouts. In my studio, I run my, the computer I'm doing the live stream on and my studio computer are both wired Ethernet. So, it's more predictable. I think, most composers and most kind of mission critical people I know will have internet on the system for authorizing stuff. They may shut it off, but they have the ability to quickly turn on and off networking to get to the internet. And there are some network drivers that can cause problems for real-time audio performance. So if that's the case, then, it makes sense to bypass it when you're going on. But I think a lot of people now, even on fairly mission critical level stuff, will be, it's so common, like, I want to check this out and not have to, go to a particular different computer to look at an email or send a file to a client. So I think it's okay to have it on, but if it is causing problems, you just turn it off when you're working with Cubase. But overall, I think it's, it's more convenient to have it on. But if you do that, don't be the guy that surfs, like bad websites that can cause trouble on your studio machine. Don't be that person. Okay, we covered that next question already for Valley. All right, we covered that next question as well. All right, so you see, hi Greg, how to identify which license belongs to a respective computer in the account Steinberg.net list as attached screen dump. How to remove a license from a scrapped or not used computer. All right, so if you want to remove a license, this could be done using the Steinberg Activation Manager. So if I wanted to look at my licenses here, we'll just say, so I could see what licenses are on the system directly here. So we can say, okay, this is going to be, So if I wanted to deactivate a particular license, I could just click on deactivate it right directly here from my system. So that's how you could do it. Now, if we're looking at it from your My Steinberg account, and initially it was that you could only deactivate it on the system, but recently when we go to, let's say, steinberg.net, and we'll go to My Steinberg, all right, and then we could see our products. So I could see my Steinberg licensed products. So let's say if I open up like Wavelab 11, that we could see so you have the option here to see what's licensed on the computers, but you could also deactivate licenses on different computers. And what we see here is just the computer name. So when we do this, like this is my work Mac, this is my home PC, this is another laptop. So we could choose to deactivate particular products on different systems. So, and you'll see this kind of reference to the computer name there from your My Steinberg account. All right, and that's questions that we had before we got started. So thanks for that. Let's go ahead, and if you've again learned something new, make sure you hit the like button, and we will jump back to our live questions. Thanks for all the great, wonderful questions. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure that that you have also done that. All right, so we have Wanderer in Oz says, greetings from Australia. I love your knowledge, Greg. I'm new to Cubase and currently binge watching all of your videos. So that could take a long time to do. I think it's something like 1,600 hours or so of just a live streams we've done. But thank you for the kind words, and let us know where you live in Australia. So. All right. And we see Sable apologizing for missing the Zoom. So we just missed having you on, but you don't have to apologize. We know that people are busy, so it's good to be busy. All right. So we see from Spike Williams, question Wavelab related. The reason I asked about upsampling was I have an old master imported, but when I hit play, nothing happens. I assume the sample rate is wrong. Sorry, not really Cubase related. So, yeah, it's no problem. But if you're in Wavelab, let's come over here and just take a quick look. So once we come over here, so I think if we do even just analyze, and if we do a global analysis, you could probably, let's see if it'll show the file, but I think you should be able to see like what info, like what sample rate and stuff. Let me see if I can find it quickly. But I mean, you could take it into Cubase and see kind of what the, let me just, having a brain cramp here. All right, so if you just select a particular file, so let's say, okay, I want to open up a file and go to info. Here you could see, the size, the channel configuration, the sample rate, the bit depth of the particular file. So, just go to info and see if it makes sense, or if it's 47K sample rate or something odd like that someone has created for you that will maybe. And then in WaveLab you could probably open it as a raw file, but you just go to the info there. All right, so we see from Jazzy Lamel, so question, hi Greg, my client recorded a full set of drums in audio and now wants to change all of them to different sounds. Is there a way to change to a different VST instrument like Native Instruments? So let's go ahead and, we could do this pretty easily. So if you want to go to, just like the drum replacement we showed a bit earlier. Okay, so let's say we have drum kit here. So I'm going to take the kick drum and go to hit points. And let's create MIDI notes. So I'm going to put it on C1. And I'm going to select this track and create MIDI notes, and we'll assign it to first selected track. So let's say if I want to change the kit in Groove Agent, and I wanted to make it more kind of maybe a little more hip hop or a little more contemporary production, I could just load up a different kit here. So now if I wanted that kick to play along, and let's say if I want to take the snare, and let's make this into D1. So you could easily kind of replace drums very fast that way. So just come over, find the hit points, and then under here you want to kind of adjust the threshold, open up the create, and have the track selected and create MIDI notes, and then have it automatically placed directly on. All right, so we see from Alex Kai, I brought a recording into project with retrospective recording, but on this VST track, the follow chord track was enabled, and when I play back my recording, it's not what I had exactly played. How can I bring into the project the original notes I was playing? All right, so let me just kind of create that scenario. All right, so I have all right, so I'm going to just put a chord here. Okay, so we have kind of all predominantly, I'm going to play now in C major. All right, so let me just, all right, so I'm going to see if I'm just going to play. All right, and now I'm just going to place it in with retrospective record, and we'll see if this plays. All right, so now I'm going to tell this track to follow the chord track. And we'll see if that has an impact. All right, and we'll hit the retrospective record. Okay, so let's see if we choose not to have that off. So I'm going to turn off the chords, and then let's lay the retrospective record. So I think it's going to automatically be following the chord track. So I'm not sure if you can get it back afterwards, but just maybe have the retrospective record disabled if you're doing that. So let me just see if I'll try one more time with this. So we'll say follow chords. Yeah, so that may be baked in if it's already told to follow the chords. Yeah, so I could play around with it some more, but that may be kind of baked in if the track is told to follow the chords. So sorry about that. Or maybe if, let's say if I come here and paste. All right, I'll try it just one more time. And see, so this track is set to follow the chords. So if you paste it to a different track that's not following the chords, then the original data will be there. So you could, again, apply the retrospective record and just select a different track, and then the retrospective record won't be impacted by the follow chords if that other track doesn't. So you could just simply select another track and just hit the retrospective record button there. So give that a try, Alex. Let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we just have a question from Vaglerin. How often are these streamed? So we do these on Tuesdays and Fridays starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern. And it will be available to watch afterwards. I think it's our 263rd since COVID started. And there will be indexes with timestamps, and you could go to cubaseindex.com to actually search for a particular, search for particular topics. And all right, so we see from Jay from Connecticut, Secret Studios. Being new to OS X, what is the Apple IAC driver and how would it apply to Cubase and other software? What the IAC is an inter-application communication. So it's basically like a software MIDI cable that can route MIDI information from one application to another. So it's often kind of set for like a loop back. Like if you want to send MIDI from one track to another track, you could send it via IAC. So think of it as a software MIDI cable that allows for MIDI communication to go between different parts of the program or different applications even. It could be a little finicky. I think that's a fair statement. All right, so Wanderer in Oz is from South Australia in Wollonga. Thanks for letting us know. It's always fascinating for me seeing people from all over the world. All right, great to see Mr. O on. I believe he's from Cali, Colombia. His question is, whenever I add an instrument track and go to add a VST, all my folders are open. I was wondering if there is a way to have them closed. I have to close them manually. All right, so let's do a new project here. All right, so I add an instrument track. All right, so that seemed to add as expected. So say I want to add a Groove Agent SE track. Now if I add an instrument rack, all right, so say, so whenever I add an instrument track and add a VST, all my folders are open. I was wondering if there's a way to have them closed. So let me just add a number of audio tracks. All right. And let's see if I have all these in a folder. So we'll just move selected tracks to new folder. So I come here. So when I go to add an instrument track, let's make it a retro log. So it seems like, I'm not sure what folders you're talking about, but let's say if I add an instrument rack, so let's say we come here, let's add an instrument rack, and let's say, okay, I want Halligan 6. That will add the folders, but not instrument tracks. So, if you're adding, so that will show you the return channel because you have like the MIDI track that's added, and then many people want to immediately come and be able to access the particular outputs for audio processing. But there is a shortcut, that you could set up if you get a project and go to track folding just to toggle all tracks or close all folders. So you could come here. So let me know if it's an instrument track or you're adding an instrument rack. If you add an instrument track, I don't think that does it, but we could just say, okay, we want to fold all tracks. And those are all the different audio return channels. So maybe you're using an instrument rack and a MIDI track being routed to it. And if you don't want that behavior, consider using an instrument track. All right, wonderful to see Pablo on, the wonderful drummer. It always makes everything better. Everyone's happy when Pablo is on. He gets 2 gallons of nougat ice cream. So I think we have the whole hot mess group on. Hope you're doing well, Pablo. All right. So we just see, is there a way to mouse click on an audio file track and then press play, or do I always have to drag my mouse to the top bar and click to select where to place the play function? Because it's, I think the thinking is that when you're in a particular, let me just activate this. So like so if you click on something that selects the event, but I think if you just like while it's playing, if you just hold down the Alt or Option key, and then you could click, and that doesn't select the event, but then you can click anywhere for the playhead to navigate to. So Alt or Option plus Shift. So give that a try. That way you don't have to go up here all the time. So just Alt or Option plus Shift. And then you can just click, and that will place the playhead position exactly where you click. See, Michael Teams is just stating the obvious that Pablo is famous. All right. All right, so see, I think I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's any more questions that sneak in. We only got a couple more minutes left, but I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. All right. So we see nice comment from Spike Williams. Thanks, Greg. Whether it's newbies or veteran engineers, you always handle the questions with such grace and infinite patience. Awesome work. Thanks. So thank you for the kind words. Always try to be helpful for people, and it's wonderful to see so many new people on the live stream. So I think we had a lot of new attendees or people that have kind of made comments or asked questions for the first time. So it's always wonderful to see. All right. So we see Jazz Dude says he gets searched at 21,000 plus index Cubase Hangout questions. So I think we're at past 22,000. So maybe next week we might hit 23,000 or something. So, but we'll see if there's any other questions. I know usually from when I talk to when you guys hear it, it's about 20 to 30 seconds off. A little bit of a delay, but we'll just give it a couple more minutes, see if there's any other questions. We should have all of the topics. I'll be watching the live stream late tonight and going through all of the topics covered and with timestamps. We see Zul's Epic Music says, thanks for the info, really interesting stream. And Pablo is just saying people should join the Discord. So it's a great suggestion. All right. Peter is wishing everyone a great weekend. Looking forward to seeing everyone next week. All right. So you see a question from Tune Studio Thomas Molnar. How can I assign more outputs simultaneously to a group track? Clicking every single track and assign it. All right. So if I have a group track here, One way is to say, okay, I want to take these tracks and I could just add a group channel to the selected tracks. If you have an existing group track, I could take all of these tracks, select them, and I'm going to hold down Alt plus Shift and send them all, Alt or Option plus Shift, and send them all to Group 2. And now all those particular tracks will be routed. And we look here to Group 2 as we select the different tracks. We'll see the output routing here to Group 2 and these to Group 1. All right, see if there's more questions. We'll give it another minute or so, see if there's another question that pops up. If not, we'll wrap up and let everyone get their weekend started. We hope that everyone has a safe and wonderfully relaxing weekend. All right, we'll give it another 30 seconds or so. Okay, so with that, I guess we will go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday. And have a wonderful weekend. And and please stay safe and healthy. All right, take care. Goodbye.